interrupt you. I'll interrupt first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Baldini, the Youth Services Section Leader with Parks and Recreation. I have 2 kiddos, but we're living in Fairfax County. Did Grace go yet? She's always my go-to.
She did.
So I had to cut out and switch devices. So I'm not sure who
I
did
can go.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a nursing supervisor with school health, and I've been with public health Arlington County for about 5 years. I will pass it to Miss Judy.
Thanks, Robin. I'm Judy Haddon. I'm a community member. I was on the partnership since the beginning, part of the group that helped put it together years and years and years ago. And I currently co-chair the Youth Mental Health and Wellness Committee with Alicia, and also am part of the have been part of the Student Services, APS Student Services Advisory Committee for a long time. And I have 3, my kids went through Arlington schools, and now my 3 grandchildren go to Arlington schools, go to Cardinal and to middle school. Anyway, I'm losing it. I just lost a name. But anyway, my grandchildren also go to schools. So I hang around Arlington schools a lot.
And we have Ann O'Brien. You already went. I'm sorry.
Mary's on there now.
Let's put Mary on the spot.
Don't join us. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late.
Mary, we're just doing introductions. If you want to take over.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Cadera. I'm on the school board, and I am the school board liaison to the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. And I'm happy to be here with you.
And is that the whole group?
I think so.
Great. Very good. So I am going to jump in. Thanks very much, everybody, for your patience. I've sent a bunch of emails. If you're on my list for P&D, for Planning and Development Committee, you got even more emails. We are, Sally, I think was going to show the agenda, but I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I see that we have a quorum. Great, Sally, I can see the agenda. Perfect. So you see what we have on our agenda for this evening. The feature is Kendra Jacobs, who is the clerk to the county board, and she is here already, and she'll have a presentation on the new Arlington meetings policy. We'll have updates, which I think we can do after Kendra's presentation. Updates and announcements we can do at the same time. And then what I wanted to kick off with, all right, Sally, I think we can pull that off so we can see everybody again. I'm going to jump in, but Sally, whenever you have a chance, yeah, we don't need to see the agenda. Oh, thank you. So I'm taking this a little out of order because we have a quorum right now, and I know some people might have to leave early. So before Kendra's presentation, I'm sorry about the dog. I want to jump in. One thing that Kendra will be addressing is that we have a new requirement to have an electronic meetings policy in place. For those of you who've been with the partnership for a long time, you know we've got something in our charter about electronic meetings. But what we need and what's going to be required in order to take advantage of the opportunity to have 2 virtual meetings a year, and in order to invite anyone to join virtually who has one of the specified reasons for not appearing at an in-person meeting, we need to have this policy in place. And in order to put the policy into place, we thought we better seize the day and act fast, because if we can do the voting in our last virtual meeting, then folks who can join virtually only will be able to join for the vote. So we may have 1 or 2 more members actually who said they could join who will be joining in. But I wanted to very briefly, because I did send it around so late, let people know what's in the electronic meetings policy. But I'm going to lead off with the most important part, which is this is the policy that we need to adopt unless we get permission from the county attorney to make any changes. And so I think in terms of tweaks that we might make to the policy, that it's good to keep that in mind. And I'm in favor of adopting it as is. But I'll open that up for discussion after I go through some of the main provisions. The policy includes sections on, so the first section talks about virtual meetings, which will still be, we'll still be able to meet all together in a virtual meeting a couple of times a year. It then has a section about how to request individual meetings. And I would say most importantly, it tracks Virginia requirements anyway. And so a lot of the policy is really an explainer rather than something individualized for each committee. It's an explainer of what is required for us to have anyone appear virtually for a meeting going forward. And so I'm very happy to take questions and open it up for discussion. Again, my recommendation is going to be that we adopt it as is. When that happens, we'll make sure we get our name in there. You saw that the policy has bracketed, commission name in a number of places throughout. But otherwise, it looks like it's good to go, that there isn't any other language that's open for revision unless we want to make a special request to the county attorney. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for discussion.
Good night, it's Judy. I have a question. Are there different categories for trying to think, for types of meetings or situations where there are people that we would like to have participate, but for one reason or another, they can't be with us in person? I'm concerned about young families that are really busy.
Exactly. And that'll be in Kendra's presentation and Q&A,
Okay.
but there are set categories. So there's a health reasons, there's a, I live too far away to make it in person. And I think a caretaker provision as well. I'm looking to see if Kendra's nodding, but yes, Judy, there are a couple of set categories. And those categories, there are ways for people to make the request if they're members. And if you're a guest, then you're welcome to join as part of the public. And I will say that this is something, and again, I'm sorry, Kendra, to take this out of order, but it's something that the county actually tried to get a more liberal policy, just understanding the practicalities and the advantages of virtual meeting, and made a request in Richmond and got some improvements, but didn't get everything we wanted. So I think I forwarded the email to this group from Kate Crystal to that effect. Yeah, so, and then Kendra can go through it, and then it's complicated. I think we'll need some refreshers as people know that they'll be out for certain meetings.
I just worry that it's going to be sort of a roadblock, a stumbling block or whatever for some people, age groups, whatever, people of different backgrounds that aren't, they don't know what this is all about anyway and would like to participate, but may not have transportation to the meetings, or I don't know. I just worry about this being a big problem for us in terms of recruiting a representative, as much as we want to be representative of the community in a variety of ways. I do worry about that. But I know you can't do anything about it. And I'm just expressing my concern.
Megan, I have a kind of question or maybe just, it's a question to clarify the kind of the virtual aspect of that for the different categories or reasons of, because it said somewhere in there around the whatever group being able to meet up to 2 times a year virtually. So is that the limit? So in other words, if there's a member that sort of meets one of those criteria, I'll use myself with my health condition. I'm not comfortable being in person in most situations with groups inside at this point. So would that mean that I basically have to drop off of, not be a member anymore with the partnership? Because I mean, you don't want a member that's only there 2 times in the year.
Right. So there are 2 different categories, and I could have explained a little bit better. There's the entire group can meet via Zoom, twice a year is the general rule. And Kendra may go into that more and we may have more questions. And then on top of that, when the rest of us are meeting in person, there are people who will say, I have a medical condition, I have a disability, what have you. And there's a certain amount of, reflection that the minutes have to have on why people aren't there, but we'll certainly be really cognizant of privacy concerns and so on and keep it general. So those are 2 separate things. So there are, we can opt to have a couple of meetings all virtually. And that's an annual limit of about, of 2. And again, there are some asterisks there, depending on how many times you meet overall. And then on top of that, some people can opt out. And so what Sally and Lynn have been working on, Sally especially, are making sure we have a space where we can have hybrid meetings starting in September.
Mm-hmm.
Hybrid meaning some people are joining virtually.
Right. And yeah, that's helpful, just because I read through it admittedly pretty quickly. I just forgot what I was going to say. It's about, well, it'll come back to me. I've just lost my thought.
Megan, could I say one more thing? It's Judy. It's just, some of us had worked on the idea of having community advisors to make us even more, get more people involved in any way that they could be involved. So that just, makes me, I'm disappointed that I don't know how we could do that. To have a group of community members and have a representative come, I don't know. I'm just thinking it's ironic that we're trying to figure out how to reach farther and have alternative ways for the community to participate. And I know it's a state that did this, but.
Thanks, Judy. And I'm not, just as the placeholder, and then I saw Jamie's hand and then I saw Rick's hand. This will not be the end of our discussion even today. So once we have a vote on the electronic meetings policy, we'll have the benefit of a much better presentation from Kendra and open it up for discussion again, because some of these things I have questions about as well in terms of welcoming people who aren't members,
right.
And how we may be able to welcome them. And then, I think something that we can, and I'm sure every other commission can put this as a legislative priority for Richmond as well. Jamie.
I was just gonna say, and Kendra will probably cover this in her presentation or talk about it, but I think the in-person requirement is for people who are commission members, right? So any invited guests, any invited speakers, if they're those folks can join virtually as long as there's a quorum in person.
Oh.
So for people who are, stopping by, for people who are interested in joining, who might attend for a couple meetings before joining as an actual commission members, I believe that they are able to still join virtually as long as there's a quorum in person. If there's not a quorum in person, I think that's where there's a challenge. And then I heard what you said, Megan, which I imagine others commissions might also be thinking about in terms of next steps with how to move forward, since the virtual option has, for many people, made meetings, easier to attend. So I just wanted to add that piece.
I remembered what I forgot a few minutes ago. And I think we haven't, at least more recently, we haven't had minutes to our meetings and stuff. So it was an issue, but it was the point about the second point, Megan, that you shared around there would have to be something mentioned in the minutes for anyone that asked to be virtual outside of the 2 times a year. And I may be reading too much into it, so it'll be good to get clarified, but it said something to the effect that it would have to include the personal reason why the person has to be there in virtually. But I don't know what that means. If it's a personal issue, I don't think you should be publishing
Let's definitely get
publicly.
to that. I
Yeah.
know, I would love to get to that in the Q&A after Kendra's presentation.
Thank
And then
you.
just to kind of remind folks that unless we have passed an electronic meetings policy, we all have to be here in person. So that's the incentive, beginning in September, beginning in August, but we're not meeting in August. So John, I see your hand.
Well, given that we're not allowed to make amendments tonight, I would like to move that we accept this policy as is. And I would like to add, from my point of view, if there's tweaks to make, we've got the rest of the year to do it. And we've got till the next legislative session before anybody's going to do it anyhow. So I move that we accept it as is.
I second. So why don't we go ahead? I'm not sure if we vote with virtual hands or raise our hands in the air. But Sally, would you do the counting? I'd say any kind of hand. And this is, I believe the voters are commission members. So all in favor of adopting a new electronic meetings policy, raise your hand. I see Anne, Megan.
You might
Alicia,
have to
did I
do a
see your
voice vote.
hand?
No, I see you. Okay.
Mike,
Oh yay, oh yay. All right, here we go. Thank you.
Sally, who do you have for the yays?
I have Ann O'Brien, John Andelin, Dave Carlson, Michael Brown, and Alicia Guajardo, and you.
All right, the new policy passes. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Without further ado, I would love to turn it over to Kendra, who knows what she's talking about on the new policy and has been extremely patient with me bumbling through the introduction of this discussion. So thanks, everybody.
So Kendra, you aren't, oh, there you are. Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you that last minute. Okay.
Your audio is in and out, Kendra. It feels like you're far away from the microphone.
Okay, let me adjust. I was trying to adjust the lighting. Audio. How's this? Is this
That's better. Yes.
okay? I'll speak a little louder as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Hold on, let's back up. Are you still hearing me okay?
It's still very spotty and not loud enough.
Okay. Let's see if I can make a quick adjustment here.
That's better.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to, no, I see you shaking. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's try this. Okay, I don't want to get right into the camera, but let's see. it seems when I point this way, it
Yes,
seems.
that's the best. That's the best
Okay.
right there. And when you're facing the screen, it works better.
Okay, so I'm gonna be like the old time, like antenna, you know?
Right.
Don't move, I'm just gonna say right here. All
Thank you.
right, so I am gonna give somewhat of a brief overview of what's expected as we transition back to in-person meetings. And sorry, I have some notes over here. I'm just gonna try to like look at both ways there. And talk about this electronic meetings policy. And you're gonna hear me switch between the word virtual and electronic, because electronic is what the state uses to describe what we're talking about. And we just all know it is like virtual meetings. So, you know, if I go back and forth, it all really means the same thing. So just kind of don't get confused by that. But, and then, so I'm going to go through parts of this presentation. I'll stop along the way for questions on that section covered. So let's just get into some background. And I think most of you know this, but I'll just kind of go through it just to kind of frame up how we got to the point where we're at now, transitioning back to in-person, and the allowances or the exemptions that we have for electronic participation at this point. So at the beginning of the pandemic, you all know that the governor declared a state of emergency for local jurisdictions, which allowed, or for the state, which allowed local jurisdictions to also declare emergencies for the pandemic. And that provided an exemption to the state's open meeting laws that require in-person meetings by meeting bodies, the county board, school board, and any appointed bodies under those entities. So we were all permitted to meet virtually during the emergency. We'll fast forward a little bit, and fortunately, we've reached a point in this time where we're in a much better place in terms of the pandemic, much better than 2020 and 2021. Though some would say, and I would agree, that we're not completely out of the woods. We still have to take precautions. We still have to be careful about COVID-19, but we are at the point where the governor has lifted the state of emergency for Virginia, and now the manager has lifted the local emergency declaration effective August 15th. And so that is, that means that the exemptions that we've been allowed to operate under no longer exist, and that we all have to come back to in-person meetings in accordance with the state law. So the county board resumed their in-person meetings over about a year ago, and we've been using the hybrid model, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, which, you know, again, is we have some people in person, mainly the board and other folks who choose to come participate in person. And we have people who have been participating virtually, and it's been pretty successful. I have to say, we have a pretty good mix, maybe about a 50-50 mix of public participants who participate virtually and who come in person. And I'm going to, again, talk more about the hybrid meeting model in just a moment. Okay, so here we are, August 15th is the time where all bodies need to come back in person. And just like it was in the before times, you'll be meeting at locations in Bosman or other locations around the county. And those meeting rooms have been, have had updates to the technology to allow for hybrid meetings. And there have also been some changes to the state law, which Megan kind of touched on, to allow some virtual participation by members and just individual members as the body itself under some very specific certain restrictions and conditions. So we're going to get into some slides. Give me just a moment. Everyone hearing me okay still? Okay.
For me, Kendra, it's best when you're looking, I think, at your screen, when you're looking kind of to your right. When you look straight towards the camera, I can't hear you that well.
Ah, okay.
You might be,
I don't know about other folks.
Kendra, you might want to look at the noise suppression feature. Turn it off so it doesn't suppress the noise, because that might be the problem too.
Okay, is that in Zoom? Is that feature in Zoom or on the computer? It could switch devices too, but I don't want to break up the meeting here. Fun fact, I don't use Zoom very often. we've been using Teams throughout this whole thing, so I, you know, have a little bit of a disadvantage. I'm gonna try this really quickly to see if I can make an adjustment to my computer. I don't know.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't want to hold this up, so I'm just gonna try to keep my head straight. Okay. All right, so if at any point you need me to stop, repeat something, or make an adjustment, just let me know. I'm gonna try to share my screen. Okay, are we looking? Everyone can see that? Okay.
Looks good, thanks.
Alrighty. So this is just kind of what I covered. Again, hybrid meeting is you have some folks in person, you have some folks virtual. So let's just talk about the two ways that members can participate electronically. And this, you know, gets at what Megan was talking about and gets to some of the questions that you all had. So the body can have, you all can have an all virtual meeting, 2 meetings per year, or 25% of your total meetings, whichever is greater. So if you are scheduled to have 11 meetings per year, that means you can have 4 all virtual, just like you're doing now, meetings, but they cannot be held consecutively. Okay, and then there are some scenarios in which individual members can participate electronically, and we're going to get into the particulars of that. Now, before we get into that, I just want to take a quick moment to mention that last row that talks about hybrid meetings. And again, members of the public can participate. These are non-members, so that kind of gets to the question you were saying before, where you have other people who you would like to have as guests, or presenters, or who are just not appointed members of this body, appointed by the county board, and aren't considered part of the meeting body itself. They can participate virtually, or they can participate in person. And let's see if I can move this little thing. I don't know what you can see. Okay. Now, with hybrid meetings, you must offer the in-person option. That's a given, but you can also offer folks the opportunity to participate virtually. And again, that virtual option for a hybrid meeting is open to non-members, staff members, and other presenters, and just members of the general public who may just want to listen into your meeting. Okay, so let's talk about the exceptions for the all virtual meetings. So there are a few groups here on this side of the screen that absolutely cannot conduct all virtual meetings, and that includes the county board, school board, planning commission, HLRB, which is historic review board, and the zoning appeals board. All others, again, can have all virtual meetings. Again, 2 meetings, or 25% of your meetings during the year, not consecutively. And you must have the adopted electronics meeting policy that you just adopted. And this just gets, again, into more detail. So the law for electronic meetings, or the open meetings law, defines all virtual public meeting with the following. So it has to be conducted electronically, and everyone participating must be electronic. Basically just the same thing you're doing right now. And again, we covered that. And so, this just kind of gets into detail about the fact that you must have access for the public in your all virtual meetings, and you must advertise it as an all virtual meeting. Again, no change from what you're doing now. The only change is that you can only do this for 2 meetings, or 25% of your meetings. Okay, so let's talk about individual members, and this is where it gets a bit more, sticky in terms of the options and the parameters that you have to operate under. So there's 3, we're going to cover these 3 options first. If the member has a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents you from physically attending, these are your options for participation. Or if there's a medical condition of the member or the member's family, and the member is a caretaker, and you must be there to take care of the person with the medical condition. This last one doesn't really apply to Arlington Advisory Commissions, but we do, talk about it because it is in the state's law. But if your principal residence is more than 60 miles away from the meeting location, again, not something that I expect that we'll run into, but we just like to go ahead and mention it and be transparent. And then the parameters, there's one more actually. I think I'll go back. I'll go down to the last one is if the member is unable to attend due to a personal matter, and that personal matter must be identified with some specificity. And there was a question about privacy and having this information go into the minutes. Unfortunately, I don't have a real good answer because the state has not given us a whole lot of flexibility or guidance. But I think that what my guidance to people is to put as much information in the minutes that makes sense and not violates people's privacy. And I know that that's kind of, that's vague, but for instance, if trying to think of a good example of a personal matter, I'm going to say if you have a wedding to attend, you don't want to get into the details of the wedding and who it's for and all of that. This is probably a weaker example, but I think the minutes could reflect something like the member needed to participate virtually because they were traveling for a family event. You see what I mean? So I would say that you need to be specific enough to describe why the person cannot attend in person, but you don't have to give personal information about your family or your health and that sort of thing. I'm going to take questions in a minute because I sense that there are some questions on that. But again, it's something that we're still kind of working on with the attorney. And I think that we'll continue to have conversations about, only because we have not, the state is not very specific in how we can describe the nature of someone's personal matter without violating their privacy. So there's more to come on that, I'm sure. And this particular option cannot be used more than 2 meetings or 25% of the meeting. So again, if you typically have 11 meetings as a group, that's 4 meetings, that's one individual person, or each individual person could use this provision. Okay, so the parameters under which any of these provisions, this one for personal matters, as well as these 3, temporary or permanent disability or medical condition for you or you as a caregiver, are such that a physical form must be available to meet in person. You must have the electronic meeting policy, which you just adopted. The chair must be notified in advance, and there is no exact provision in the policy or the law that says how much time in advance, but the guidance that I give people is at least 24 hours or up to the next day. And that's actually what's in the county board's policy, is the day before or the day of or an hour before the meeting. This is something that you may all talk about as a group, because your chair is going to have to be the one to make a decision about whether or not you have a quorum and whether or not people will be approved to participate electronically. So, Megan, you may find that time frame doesn't work for you to be able to make that decision. And the law is actually silent on the time frame. So you might have to revisit that with your staff liaison. And again, the minutes must reflect the reason for the virtual participation. We kind of talked about the privacy. The one thing I do want to like really point out here, and I think everyone here knows this, is that it's very important for people to understand that these options, as much as we don't want this to be the case, these options for virtual participation are really supposed to be exceptions. The default is to meet in person. The exceptions are these exemptions that we are allowed by the state. And so to be fair for everyone, to make sure that there's a quorum and that your body can actually be effective in your mission, everyone should really think about whether or not they really need to take in the option. If they, if they really are able to come in, you just want to be fair to your fellow volunteers and to your body and to your group and your group's mission. Because if you don't have a physical quorum in the room, and then no one can participate virtually anyway, and then the group cannot vote on particular matters that you need, it may, I don't know if you have some time sensitive matters that you have to deal with in which you have to take a vote, that could really affect how you get your business done. So it's really important for people to just, make sure that you're understanding that you have to kind of use this really in those exceptional cases. So I think I'm going to stop there. I had another point that I wanted to make and it slipped my mind, but I'm sure it'll come back to me like at the most inopportune time. It's usually how it goes. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then see if you all have any questions.
Kendra, I want to clarify some numbers. So 25% are 2 meetings. So we have 11 meetings a year. And 25% of 11 is 2.75. And I understand you round that up. So that would be 3 meetings and not 4, correct? Oh, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you, Kendra. Very low volume.
Okay, what about now? Is this better?
Not really. This is so strange. Yeah.
What about, is this okay?
Yes, that's a little better. Yeah. No, we can't hear you now.
Back to silence.
Yeah.
Okay. I tell you what, I may have to switch computers. I'm gonna try to do that while
Okay. Or if you have a headset that may.
So maybe while Kendra's, we should give Kendra a moment to figure things out because it's hard to be talking, presenting, answering questions.
Yeah.
And fiddling with the microphone. Maybe we can write some of our questions down and just go through them while she's working on that. It's always hard to be on the spot and doing something logical. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to throw out. One is a question we talked about in the past, and that is the partnership really the kind of meeting where we have to take votes and have to have a quorum, number one. So if we don't have a quorum, we can still have the meeting, still have the conversations and just say, well, this meeting won't be a voting meeting, but we'll have the meeting anyway. It also seems like, we could also set a schedule where you just say, okay, we're gonna have we're gonna have quarterly voting meetings. That'll be the meetings that people really have to be at. And then I just want to make sure about something that Kendra said, that if say there's someone who's bedridden but wants to be on the partnership, is it really the case that they have to come to, I mean, it seems like we're sort of excluding somebody who simply can't make it, but could participate in a hybrid meeting all the time. So does that 1 in 4 rule for in-person quorum things also apply to people who choose in a hybrid meeting to, it doesn't seem like there's a rule about hybrid meetings. And if somebody is 100% virtual, if there's a quorum in the actual meeting itself present, why shouldn't that person be able to participate and vote? And I'll say one other point that I put in the chat, and that is the, we get to decide what the quorum is. If we say a quorum is 3 people present, then that's the quorum, right?
Kendra, are you back with audio? Yes.
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
Oh, yeah.
perfect, perfect. Whatever you did worked.
Okay.
Yes.
Should have done that earlier. Sorry. Yeah, I wait for my personal computer to my
Okay.
work computer. Okay. So let me go back to Lynn's question, and I'll come back to the other question. Let me check the numbers on that. This is, I did not do the math. Excuse me. I took this math from someone else's math.
Okay.
And this is what's actually in the FAQs. And
Okay.
so let me go back and find out, like,
Yeah, so we have 11
where,
meetings a year, right?
yeah. And I mean, what
Three.
you're
John
saying
John
makes sense.
says 3, yes. Yes, I
It,
think we asked
it should
this
be 3.
at the initial meeting with the initial meeting, and the county attorney said we round up. Min Chow
Yes,
said we
that is
round up,
true.
so 2.75, we round up to 3 for us.
That would be 3 meetings, yes.
Yes.
So let me go. I think maybe the FAQ is wrong, and I just didn't bother to really, like, do any math. Just
Sure.
check it. To your question, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Rick.
John. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go, Rick. So you were asking about someone who is, has a medical condition, but they're not a member of the board.
No, I'm saying they are.
Oh, they are a member of the board. I mean, they could use the medical condition exemption, but again, there needs to be an in-person quorum in the physical room. And then to your question of a quorum, the county attorney defines the quorum as 51% of the group.
Okay.
So, yeah. So you couldn't sort of just change the quorum every time, like whoever's here, it's, that's our quorum. It has to be representative of the actual membership. Did I answer all of your questions? I'm sorry, in that whole, changing computers. I
His
didn't
last question boils down to, what if we don't have a quorum? Is it, can we still have an informal meeting and just no votes? And I guess I would add to that, I assume there would be minutes if there's no quorum still, sort of what happens if we don't get enough people in the room?
Yeah, if you don't have a physical quorum, well, a couple of things happen. If you have someone who has requested virtual participation and you still don't have a physical quorum in the room, that person cannot participate virtually. So that's sort of one thing. You could still have the members of the public or non-appointed, stakeholders participate virtually. But then what also happens is if you have any formal actions that you have to take, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to take any formal votes, but you could still hear informational items. You could still have training sessions and that sort of thing. You just would not be able to take any formal actions on anything.
But most of our votes are to end the meeting. We're not like a major deciding committee where controversial information is presented and we vote on an action, maybe for advocacy for a board meeting or something, that would be a vote. Right? Wouldn't you say, Megan?
Okay.
I do have another question, Kendra, and that is getting to people with disabilities who don't want to identify as a person with a disability. If I'm right, the policy says you have to identify what member is not there and why. I'm sure we can leave it to a member to call it a medical condition time and time again, but to me, that's a really big problem with the policy, and I hope our county attorney is pushing on it if I'm right.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand your question. So not having someone with a medical condition be more specific is an issue?
No, the issue would be if somebody has a disability that prevents them from attending, but they don't want the minutes to reflect that they have a disability.
Right.
Then I'm saying, well, I guess they could say medical condition, let's say it's somebody who has a mental disability and they don't want to be in a public meeting.
Yeah. And again,
or what have you.
Yeah, and again, the law is not very specific on how far you go to describe these things, but I would say in that case, I would, just describe it as a disability. I wouldn't even say a mental disability, or you could say a permanent disability or a temporary disability, because that's what's stated in the law itself. But you don't have to say what that is. If it's for a medical condition, then again, you could just say for a medical condition.
But I guess
mean, I
that's the
know-
point of contention, is that the individual may not even want that to be shown as the reason as a medical, condition. Do we have an option not to indicate that?
I was going to
Yeah.
say, as an employer, you would
Yeah.
never discuss who has a disability on your staff. That is not the business of the other people in the room. And so that's my concern here. I know we're not employing folks, and so maybe there aren't those legal protections, but it
I mean,
doesn't.
could you say a health matter, a health
Yeah, medical.
situation?
I mean,
Does that think
medical
medical?
exception.
Well-being, an issue they're dealing with well-being?
Yeah, I think these are all good
Be
points,
vague.
and sorry. So, I will take this back as a note to bring back to the attorney, because I think it's a very good point. I think for right now, I would describe it as a medical reason, or you could say this is what I've done for board members. I never say what is actually going on. I just say a medical reason when I've had to do the minutes in these cases. And we can continue to have that conversation with the attorney and see, I think she needs to make a determination on what we can say that still meets the law. Okay.
John has a hand up.
Okay.
So does Jamie, by the way. I was just gonna say, I would think that HIPAA might come in here where you're not allowed to ask things about medical conditions. And so please ask the attorney, but
But we would
seems to
just say
me-
a medical condition or a medical exception. That's all we would ever,
Yeah, I don't know that that's
they can say some degree
disclosing
of
something about
specificity.
someone's health. No, you wouldn't have a medical condition if you're healthy. And so it's saying you have a problem, we don't know what it is, and that may be an issue. I'm not sure. But these are all things we're going to have to live with. One of the other questions I have is a way maybe not to live with it. If the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families is appointed by the manager, we're not subject to these rules. If it's appointed by the county board, we are. And so I'm not suggesting anything more dramatic at the moment, but if this gets in the way of us doing our work, I think there is a way out. And I'm not sure that anybody wanted that to happen, but I think we could.
Okay. I'm writing that as a note.
Jamie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a clarification. Can members who have any type of reason for needing to participate virtual, health condition, disability, or otherwise, are they able to participate virtually if they're an actual member 100% of the time, or just the 25% or 2 times, whatever is greater?
For a medical condition, you said?
Yes, or for any of the exceptional reasons.
Okay, so the exemption for temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition, or if there's a medical condition of a member of your family that the member needs to care for as a caregiver, and the one on the residence 60 miles out, but I don't know why I keep mentioning that, but the two, I'll just focus on the temporary disability or the medical condition exemption. There is no limit in the law about how many times a member can use that. But what comes into play is the chair's ability to apply this uniformly and fairly across the board of the membership and still be able to continue with the business of the group itself. So that's just sort of the consideration that needs to be made, but absolutely you can request that. And you could possibly be granted that exemption an unlimited number of times. And this is actually a change. This is one of the larger changes from the previous law, where the previous law, it was, you know, any of these exemptions, you could only use them twice or 25% of the meetings for the most part. I think there was one that you could use unlimited number of times. The one that's the personal matter, that is the one that you can only use that twice or 25%, whichever is greater.
This is Alicia. Sorry, I don't have an option to raise my hand. But I thought on one of the slides that you showed, Kendra, that maybe it's just the way it's presented on the slide. It seemed to not be clear because I had the question that Jamie posed, because it made it sound like when reading what was on the slide that, and it was the one that said virtual and then AKA hybrid. It made it sound like there was a limitation to the 2 times or, you know, whatever, or the 25% rule. So that's kind of one thing. The way I interpreted that when reading the slide was that you basically were limited to the 2 or the 2 times or 3 times or whatever, you know, the percent. So that's kind of one point. The other one was actually the issue that John brought up, because I was looking at, there's a chart an org chart that is on the county website that kind of lists the Arlington County advisory groups, and then it kind of has it in 2 parts. And on one side, it says commission and advisory groups and who they report to, like they report to the county board. And then on the other side of the chart, it lists, it says associated departments who report to the county manager. And currently the partnership is listed under the latter, meaning the reporting to the county manager. It's not listed as an advisory group or commission. So I guess that, to me, that brought up the question that John said, are we, what is the partnership? Because we're listed under the county manager column. We're not listed under, I'm sorry, we're listed under we're listed under the county manager, not the county board, in terms of who we report to.
Okay, let me go to your original question. Sally, are you able, since I changed computers, I can't share on here?
Oh, so sorry. While you're doing that, can you share the link for that page in the
yeah, I can look for it. I'm on 2 different computers too.
Sorry, I'm looking at the list of all groups and advisory boards, and I see that a star indicates that you report to the county manager, and versus the county board, and we do not have a star. Partnership for Children, Youth and Families. So I'm seeing the complete opposite, and I've never,
I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Kendra. I'm trying to reshare the co-host, and it's giving me, where'd it go? Okay, make it go. There you go. So sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So just getting to that one question about, oops, what's in the slide? So let me share. Window, this is different. Okay. Okay. Had this all worked out when I was on the other computer. Let's see.
Never the same in a different.
Okay, I'm just gonna do this, and it's gonna be weird for a moment, folks. Sorry. Okay. Can you see this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so what you may be referring to.
Yeah, it's that one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so this, okay, well, let me, I'll start here, and I'll just, because this may be the confusion. So this slide is referring to all virtual meetings, which has that same 2 meetings or 25%. And by the way, Lynn, you are right. It is 3 meetings. I misread the FAQ. So I apologize. If you have 11 meetings, you can do 3 all virtual meetings.
No worries.
Okay. All right.
I think
And then
it was posted on the 22nd and then they changed it. It's been posted on the 25th because of multiple errors.
we're all trying to work it out. So this slide is really specific to if you have a personal matter, and that's where we talk about it's, you know, due to personal matters, more than 2 meetings, you may not use this exemption for more than 2 meetings or 25% of the meetings. But these other exemptions for disability or medical condition, they don't have the limitation.
So those are not considered personal matters,
No, these are separate.
like medical conditions and all of that, which gets to the point about the privacy that someone brought up.
Yeah.
I put in the chat the link to the chart I was referencing, if that's helpful.
I think it's just a bad graphic, Alicia. I think that little thin line between the county manager and the county board, the associated with is just what department they're associated with. But
it's different than it used to be.
We've never reported to the county manager.
Yeah, it's different now.
To my knowledge. Yeah, anyway.
So we are a commission? Or what
Yes,
are we?
you are a county board commission.
Okay.
Yeah, all of you are appointed by the county board as members, and the group was adopted by the county board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Very good questions. Who, Judy?
Yes, I was wondering about whether the meeting notification situation would stay the same, or if there would be something the county would say that it's okay to participate online if you're not a member. Are there changes there, or how will that be handled?
Yes, so the meetings, the hybrid meetings must be advertised as such. So it will give information to the public on how they can participate either in person or virtually. And it'll have all of the, links and that sort of thing. And that's something that Sally and Lynn, I think, is your staff liaisons, will work on. And I believe they've had some training sessions on that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks. I wasn't quite sure, as you could tell.
So will that go out to the public somehow or another, or be posted on the county website, or how would someone know that was an option?
I've always had to put it on a calendar, the countywide internal communications calendar and the event calendar on our website. That's always been a requirement.
Okay.
And it is a requirement for all meeting bodies to post public meeting notices 3 days, 3 business days before the meetings. You may not even notice that happens because you have great staff liaisons that handle that stuff for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I can make a comment and ask a question in there too, Kendra. I know I'm jumping in front of you, John, real quick, but we're talking about the parameters for these meetings and subcommittees. So subcommittees under these commission groups are also under these guidelines or requirements. So we have a couple of subcommittees. There's a planning subcommittee that we have, and we're looking to form a data committee. And I understand that if any 2 members from the commission group meet with regularity, that's a subcommittee, and that is under all the guidelines that we're talking about today. Is that correct, Kendra?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And there's more information that's covered on that in the FAQs that have been posted, and we've posted those FAQs on the main advisory group page, so that's available to the public in your membership here.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'm going to give
John.
a shout
Yeah.
out for the FAQs. The FAQs are really wonderful, Kendra. Thank you. They were so clarifying. So thanks for all the work that went into those.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll take some credit, but I'll take very little because our communications, public engagement staff really came together and put that together. So I'll pass on the kudos.
I'd like to specifically mention the different structure of the partnership from most other commissions or advisory committees, in that there are 8 statutory members from DHS, APS, the courts, public health, and up to 16 citizen community members is the right term. I'm not sure. So the community members are appointed as individuals. The statutory members are appointed by the title they carry in the original charter. So a definition of member in all of these, if there's 2 members together, I mean, this would mean if DHS has a staff meeting, they may have a formal meeting because there's 3 of them on the partnership. And a quorum, does that include only the committee members, or would that include some of the commission members? We're different than almost any other group I know of by statute. And so I would think clarification of that would really be helpful.
So your group being the partnership, you have appointed members who have been appointed by the county board to serve on this body. And that is what makes up your quorum. Those are the folks that have to participate in the in-person meetings, and that's what the law applies to in terms of participating in person or virtually. If you all have other members or other stakeholders that you have, maybe you consult with, and I'm not sure when you say community partners or community members, what that means exactly. But if it doesn't sound like, and my understanding is that they're not officially appointed members of this body. They may be stakeholders who present to you. And again, I'm just kind of guessing of what that is. So maybe I should just let you tell me.
Well, for example, Rick and Jamie are representing their institutions from the county or the courts, and Megan and David are representing community members. And we've got, at the moment, I think 10, 11, 12 community members, some number like that. And we've got
the community members are appointed for a set term, and the county staff members are designated and basically sent to us, and they can, as Rick knows, they can be indefinite. Instead of
and they don't count towards your membership in terms of building a quorum and these laws.
And they can come remote anytime they feel like without changing the remote requirements.
Correct.
Because they don't count. Yeah, sorry, guys. Yes, you do.
Well, they don't count towards your
membership. They don't fall into the category of they have to be in person. Good, because pushing them to have to come to meetings strikes me as unrealistic. Beyond all the other unrealistic elements of this particular program.
We do have to have a DHS staff in person at all of these hybrid meetings.
And that's because you have that. Is that because not because of these not because of the electronic participation policy, but because of
access to IT? Yes.
The meeting and
yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think we have to have a staff person present at each hybrid meeting. It does not have to be the staff liaison.
Right.
But it has to be a staff that can assist the in-person members with the technology, accessing the room, etc. But it doesn't have to be a set staff.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with the policy for the meeting policy. That's just a nature of meeting in person, needing to have someone to handle logistics. All right. Any other questions? I think in my PowerPoint, I've really covered.
Jamie has a question. I'm sorry, Kendra.
I had one
Yeah.
question, Kendra. So just to clarify, if the partnership decided that they're only going to vote, I'm making this up, like total making up, they're only going to vote in January and March, right? Just making that up. And that the rest of the months they don't vote. They still have to have members come in person, obviously. But if it's not a quorum, did I hear you say that they could continue to have a meeting that's in person and virtual? They could not conduct business, they couldn't vote, but they could pass along information or learn or have presentations. They just couldn't vote, which might be okay with them because they only decided to vote in January and March anyway.
Correct. Well, yes, if you don't have an in-person quorum in the room, physical in-person quorum, you cannot vote and take formal actions.
But you
and I think I'm just saying it the other way.
But you can, I'm sorry, I'm like so like concrete. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but you can't vote and you can't take formal actions, but you can convene and
yes, you
talk.
can. Yes, you can convene. You can have informational sessions, trainings, that sort of thing. It still needs to be a public meeting, open to the public, because it's more than three of the membership. And if it's two people meeting, that's not a public meeting. That's just two people meeting together. But anytime you go to three, that's a public meeting. And you're absolutely correct. If you don't have a quorum, you could still have a hybrid meeting and just have information sessions and presentations.
Right. Okay, and then the second part of my question is, if you are having a meeting where you intend to vote and you have a quorum in person and you have people virtual, if at some point the quorum is no longer because people have to leave, let's say 30 minutes into the meeting or an hour into the meeting, then you can no longer vote, right? And okay.
Correct. And even further than that, this gets very complicated, but if you have members who are participating virtual using these exemptions, and you started off with a quorum in the room, the people and remember that the people who are participating virtual do not count towards your quorum. So you've lost your quorum, so you cannot take formal action. And technically the people online are no longer participating as members. I mean, they could stay online and listen technically, but they're technically no longer participating as a member of the body.
And my last question is, can the people that are participating virtually ever vote, even if there is a quorum in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if there's a quorum in person, the people participating virtually participate just like as if they were in the room.
My follow-up, I love.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to
ahead.
say, this seems a little random, but just kind of tagging this in is that part of being able to have people participate virtually is that they can be heard and seen in the room, just like anyone else. So your staff liaisons will handle all of that, but I just wanted to mention for any staff who are online who may have that question. Okay, sorry, Mimi, go ahead.
So building on Jamie and Rick, and this is great food for thought that we don't need Kendra for, but I think, we can start thinking about meeting planning for the fall and for next year, is if we choose to have one of our all virtual meetings, or let's say all three of them be the meetings where we take votes, that sounds like something we can do. And it sounds like an easier way to get more people to be able to vote. All right, this has been a really interesting conversation. Rick, I see your hand, and then I would like to move us on if Kendra has had an opportunity already to present everything that she brought.
So yeah, this is a question that I know is basic thing for public meetings, but I just want to be sure. A group decides to go against their previous decision and have a huge picnic at a park in August. Let's just say there's a public gathering. What do we do with the people that aren't supposed to have a public, you have more than 2 people there, only 2 people can go, right? And then what happens if, for example, it's an even bigger thing and just people drift in and it turns out, oh my gosh, there's 4 people from the group that, then they have not announced the public meeting. What are the practical tips about how to handle those things?
Yeah, you have to be very careful about that. And we face this all the time in the county board office because our members are, attending events and they get invited to things. They all get invited and sometimes they all want to go, but sometimes they can't. And, you just have to remember that what the rule is anytime 3 people of the same body are together and engaged in public business, it has to be a public meeting. Now, if you're just having a social picnic and no one knows that other members of the body have been invited, it's not a social gathering of the body itself, and you don't have too much to worry about. I would just kind of stay clear of gathering in groups so that you don't create a perception with the public that you're somehow discussing public business at this social gathering. If you all were to plan some sort of social gathering like that, and you know that 3 members are going to come, it's safer to advertise it and just say we're not conducting public business, but you have to also allow the public to come if they want to. So these are just things that you have to kind of weigh out anytime you have a situation like that. Did I answer your question? I feel like maybe I missed a part.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Sally, I noticed your hand was up a minute ago. Do you want to ask a question or a
Well,
comment?
I was just going to say as a comment that the minutes requirement that is also written into this would necessitate, in my experience, any advisory board has to begin business by approving those minutes, so that the genius of the way this was written is that you then are a voting body. So there is a circular nature to the way this has been presented and enacted. There's a lot of people who are lawyers in Richmond, and they knew what they were doing when they wrote this. So the things people have brought up are all, they are features. They are not bugs.
That's a good point, Sally. That's a good point, because it's not just 3 times that we're gonna be voting on things. I think that there is, voting on the minutes as well.
It's changing. It's a change. It's a very big change.
That is a good point. And I think that is something that we'll need to look into as an organization. And I say that only because, this body and there are others that realistically may not be able to start their meetings with approval of the minutes at every meeting, and things may come up. So I have some ideas, and I just would like to talk to some people before I say any more.
And as far as uniqueness, I mean, the CSB has been dealing with this in a much more impactful way. I think their decisions make very big differences in people's lives, and they have the similar staff member divide and things like that. So I don't think it's unique. Alexandria has the same thing. I've been talking to people there, so we're going to have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Anything else for Kendra? Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I hope this was helpful.
I knew this was going to be a good discussion.
Yeah. And some of the things that you guys brought up, I will definitely be bringing these back to the attorney and the board members. And it's a lot covered. In some ways, I thought of this when we first kind of started. It was like, okay, we're just going back in person. There's just a few caveats, to the electronic meeting policy. But the more you get into this, it's a lot more. involved and a lot more to think about. And so I think, you know, every time we have these discussions, people bring up really great suggestions and really great points. And so we have to just keep working on it.
I appreciate it. And I did see an email go out today that says chairs have been invited, chairs and vice chairs, for another informational session on August 3rd. And Kendra, will that be sort of a similar presentation that you just gave this group already?
It may be a little different. I think we're probably going to just allow more time for questions, because I think by now most chairs have seen this information or have, you know, an understanding of the basics. And it's just kind of flushing out some of the details and questions that have come up. So.
All right, we'll make sure we got somebody there. Thank you so much.
You're
We appreciate
welcome.
your time in the middle of the summer.
No problem. I'm going to leave unless you need me to stay for anything. But
no, thank you so much. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Great. So why don't I start with our updates and then announcements. And Rick, good segue. I'm going to start with the August get together. So we talked about this a little bit at P&D. Rick raised at our June partnership meeting. First of all, thanks everyone for that discussion. It was really, it seems like it was not just helpful for us, but also helpful for Kendra and for the county. And some of these concerns are things for us to, I think, really keep following up on in terms of keeping our meetings inclusive of, you know, people who can't be here in person for whatever reason that may be. I heard some good news, you know, about inviting new people and enabling them to join online. But I think as people become members, you know, there will be some challenges. So anyway, so for the August get together, no volunteers had come forward. We didn't want to pull the plug without bringing it up with this group again, in case there was anybody who had a great idea and really wanted to run with it. So I'm just going to leave a moment for anybody to jump in if they wanted to hold a meeting. But some of what we thought people might be thinking is, you know, there's still good reasons why people are not getting together in person. Outdoors is lovely, but logistically it's very challenging for staff and anyone who would volunteer to help because of weather. And so, you know, we had met indoors in the past in my experience, and meeting with a group indoors is not for everybody. So those are a couple of things that came up when we had this discussion again in planning and development, but I do want to open it up for any other thoughts, feelings, or volunteers.
But we did bring it up in the discussion tonight. I think my inclination is to go for it and have a picnic. But, you know, we have to make sure that, you know, it isn't right to ask other people to, if they don't feel uncomfortable or it isn't the right moment, and it becomes sort of this peer pressure thing. So, you know, also legitimate concerns. So my thought, just my opinion now, is I've reconciled the fact that it might be a good idea to wait. You know, that we haven't got our, you know, our new coordinator too is, I suppose we can get a report maybe on that, but when there's a new coordinator, that person can also come up with their ideas and we can support them. That would be another moment to get together at some point in the future when everyone feels able to participate. So that's my thought. Come full circle.
So hearing that it might be good to wait and no one jumping in to volunteer. Rick, again, with the classy segue, I'm going to turn it to Lynn. We'll say we're not meeting in August officially, and we're not having a get together, you know, sadly. And I'll turn it to Lynn for coordinator updates.
Sure. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, so I do have some relative good news. I think that we've moved the furthest that we have in terms of recruitment for the coordinator position. We are, you know, furthest in the HR process in terms of having a couple interviews already, a couple of rounds interviews for this highest rated candidate. And I'm hoping to be able to announce a good news soon. And we would be very lucky to have this person in place. I think that it is a good fit. Yes, fingers crossed. I'm crossing my eyes too, not just fingers for this one.
Well, thanks again to you, Lynn, for all of what goes into hiring, and probably Jamie. I don't even know who's in the second round, the third round of interviews.
Yes,
but I
Jamie,
expect people in this room. And
I appreciate
so
Megan
thank
and
you.
Dr.
Thanks so
Devaney
much.
for your involvement
Yeah.
and input. Yeah.
John, data committee updates.
Pretty simple. We have a fair number of volunteers at this point that are pretty diverse. And so I think we have committee members. Once we schedule the meeting, we may discover, thanks to all the rules we just heard, we may not have meetings, but we're going to give a shot for it, probably during the day. There are some schedules that work well, more midday than evening or first thing in the morning or evening. We're actually waiting to have some data. There's no point having a big data committee meeting before we have the data. The social emotional learning survey data is out, but we have not had an opportunity to see it, and I'm not sure quite how it will be presented if it is. The youth, Your Voice Matters and the Virginia Youth Survey, we're still waiting for those, but when we get something, we'll look at them. The idea is to look at the data from the point of view of public policy. So if there have been things done by the county or the schools or a trend in our society, and we can see that they do or don't work, to the extent they're working, I think we like to flag the successes. To the extent that they're working, but they haven't accomplished their full goal, we might want to point that out too. So I'm thinking of Destination 2027, the child care initiative, and there's a lot of smaller ones. So as we see what's going on, we may get an idea of whether, has anybody tried to fix this? Have they been successful or not? And we want to congratulate the people or the programs that have worked. At the same time, we really want to raise issues when there are other issues. So basically, we're going to look for a meeting time, see how many people come, see if we meet any of these requirements. The first meeting is likely to be virtual because we may beat the deadline, but I'm not sure what goes from there. So we're ready to start doing things.
Thank you, John. And then next, Sally, I saw you posted a link, and that's, I tried following up on it. It looks like it requires an Arlington login to Panorama, but that looks like that'll be good for us.
Panorama always does that. It's from APS. It's on the APS website. I'll post a link there. When you go to that from APS, it'll give you a much more satisfactory result. I don't know why it. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's just says here. Okay.
Great. And then membership, that's my agenda item. And so I think I'm just going to circulate to the group, maybe just to the community members to spare some of our, well, we'll see. Circulate to the group an email that we put together that's, short and sweet, but just encourages people to, if they're interested in the partnership, to come check us out. There's a couple of links embedded in the email draft, and we thought we'd make it available so that the planning and development, worked on this a while ago, so that if folks have contacts out in the community, people that they meet, they'll have something in their back pocket to just send off to folks and invite. And generally, we like to invite people to come check out a meeting or a couple of meetings. Sounds like they'll be able to check those meetings out virtually, and the information to join will be on the website. And so they can come see what we're all about. I think the fall is going to be a great time for recruiting because we will have our data. And data's, I've heard excitement, from people besides me in this group about seeing that data and starting to put it together. So I will put that out in front of everyone. And then I also want to say, and this comes up off and on, but the chair for the partnership, so me, the chairmanship runs from January to December. And so looking ahead, I have a finite number of meetings that I will chair. We don't currently have a vice chair. I personally have a couple of creative ideas for how people could co-chair or other things. We do have a new member, at least that I'm thinking of, and hopefully we'll get some interest off of the data committee volunteers as well. But newer members, I think it'd be helpful if they have an opportunity to vice chair for a bit before they become the chair. That's ideal. But I really want to, especially with the new coordinator, hopefully get us back on track to have chairs for a year from January to December. It's been a little while since we were in that rhythm, but I think it's a good thing. So think about that as you're thinking about new people. And I'm going to give a gold star to Carolina, who's not here because she's out of the country right now. But for the data committee, first of all, she's a great participant, but also for the data committee, she has come up with an endless row of potential volunteers. And every time, John and I say, oh, it was great to meet that person, she says, well, let me know, because here's 3 other people that I have in mind, So if she were going to be a subcommittee chair, I'd try to get her in charge of membership. She's done a great job. So, and I tell her that in person as well. So then I know Lynn has an announcement, an ACES announcement, and then other folks' announcements. I think now is a great time, and we're running a little over, but I'm glad we had that great presentation and discussion and vote earlier.
Sure. This is a quick announcement and a good news in a way in terms of the leadway that we're making in the community with ACEs, adverse childhood experience. As you know, we've done presentations to our group here about that, and we've been in conversation with Sharon. I'm sorry, I forgot her last name, but she's in charge of I think it's called culture in APS, because she's pretty high level up. And she came to us asking for ACEs training for some of the teachers. We pulled together a very brief proposal of what that may look like. And she went back and talked to her folks, and they want the whole district, the school district, to be trained on ACEs, which is huge, right? So we're looking at about maybe 2,000 individuals being trained, and we are tweaking our presentation so that we have fidelity with the ACE interface training, and at the same time making it really practical. Lots of walkaways for these individuals, whether they're teachers, bus drivers, or cafeteria workers, to really, what does this mean for me in my day-to-day interaction with the youth that I see? And so we're very excited about it. This is in collaboration with DHS, CFSD, and also I like to highlight Shari, who is a lead of Arlington Resiliency Coalition, I think. But that, we're kind of collaborating 3 prongs, and we're looking for a nice impact at a pretty wide level with the whole school district. And this will happen at the end of summer. Okay, so that's a quick announcement and sharing of good news.
Thanks, Lynn.
Sure.
Others, I see libraries, parks, county staff, other county staff, courts.
I have just kind of a little update and a plea for help. Our Gunston Community Center will be opening its full day preschool program. That's from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Anybody who participates in a park and recreation program, if they qualify, can have a fee reduction of up to 75%. So that's 75% off of full day daycare, which is a pretty significant fee reduction for families who qualify. And we still have plenty of room. So if you all interact with families who are looking for full day childcare, you can do 2 days a week or 3 days a week or all 5. That's kind of unique. It's hard to find that if you want part-time full daycare. We are offering it and we still have spaces available, and they can go to the County Parks and Recreation page to sign up for it.
Can you send that information to the partnership about that we could just forward on?
Yeah, I know that they created a brochure or a flyer, and so I'll get the flyer and send it off to you guys as well.
Because I'm
Thank
sure,
you.
I know we have families that can really definitely use that. If they're nearby and can work out, that'd be terrific. Is there a requirement for citizenship or
No.
other economic?
It's county. Yeah, no. So the only real requirement, if there's a requirement, is with the fee is county resident for fee reduction. You can go as a non-resident to the program. I will tell you it's expensive because I believe you do not qualify for the county fee reduction. And so therefore you'll be paying full price plus we charge additional fees for non-residents. So it is hefty.
Do you mean non-Arlington County residents or non?
Arlington County residents.
Yes.
Yeah. Residency in general doesn't count to us.
Mm-hmm.
The kids just need to be able to qualify with like a birth certificate. We just need a couple documents, and it doesn't matter where it's from. So if you have more specific questions on that, Rick, just give me a jingle or send the family my way, and we can help do what we can to get them registered. But I will send you guys a flyer. Thank you.
Yes, that'd be great. I got a big list I send things out on, so that's
Great.
That's
Super.
good.
Thank you. That's exciting. Others?
Hi, it's for school health and DHS. It's back to school time, believe it or not already. We're doing school entry requirements. So our nurses are really working hard to help facilitate families getting immunizations and physicals that are sometimes a barrier. So we do have the ability of getting them a free physical for school entry through DHS. The school nurse can sign them up for that and make sure they meet requirements. It'll definitely, I mean, it's very likely that we can get them in with our providers with DHS. It's not a medical home. The initial goal is to get them in school and meet those requirements so they don't have to be excluded from the start of school. And then with school nurses, we're also gonna most likely do some vaccine clinics for back to school requirements, particularly for middle and high school. Tdap and meningococcal are new requirements that kind of crept up on families, and there's a lot of barriers for that. So I just wanted to highlight that in case you know any families that would need that.
I could say from a juvenile court perspective, I think I only have bad news that, definitely we're getting a lot more cases. Suddenly there's been a jump of cases. Programs are getting full. We've lifted our caps on population for like girls outreach program. During COVID, we had, a certain number of kids to keep distance and everything. And we're getting tons of referrals. So that's, it's a good thing we have a service that's available and expanding, but I think that the kids are going to need lots of help. And, the substance abuse thing is really tough for us because we get kids who are using, we know they're using, and it doesn't feel, or people say, line staff feel that they're the only ones out there sort of enforcing an idea of not using and, using substances as a bad thing. It almost seems like there needs to be a community recognition that adolescents should not be using any drugs, like a drug-free environment. We're struggling with that. We have kids, for example, who the whole time they're in a program, they're testing positive. And there's no one else to enforce things other than us, and there isn't too much we can do. I don't think all hell is breaking loose with young people, though, which I think is great. I think there's a lot of concern about adolescents sort of being out there and unmoored somehow. I don't think that's the case, even though crime and stuff is going up. So it seems to me that there are resources that the kids are using and connections that they have. But I do think we need to definitely redouble our efforts in promoting the idea, maybe use the data to promote the idea of, what kids are saying they need, and then listening to them to, as we move forward and look at new initiatives. I definitely think with COVID, we have turned, we're turning a corner. COVID hasn't disappeared at all, but we're turning a corner, and now's the time to start thinking about what's next. That's all I got.
Thanks, Rick. Anyone else?
Megan, can I just share that, just a reminder that CR2 is still available. They are a lifespan service now. So from, whatever age on up the lifespan. So they're working with children, teens, adults. They can continue to be reached using their number and maybe at some point we'll do a kind of crisis continuum presentation at some point. It just occurred to me while I'm talking, but they can be also reached by calling 988 and then that will connect you to the regional call center, which will dispatch the closest crisis team. It could be CR2, it could be REACH. They will be cross responding as, depending on the availability of the mobile response teams. 988 is also available, and you'll be hearing more about that. So you can call CR2's number, you can call 988. There'll be a warm handoff between 988. 988 is in the process of building up. So either way, you can still access mobile crisis response. So I just wanted to remind everyone about that.
Thank you. And I do love the idea, Jamie, maybe of sometime in the fall having a partnership meeting, because for me as just a community member, I see the lists and who qualifies for what and how many phone numbers there are. And hopefully 988 one day will be the way to triage a little bit of who you call first, but I think it'd be great for you to just kind of help walk us through. And I know 988 is never going to be perfect, or at least not for a while, because I have a 617 area code, so it's going to put me through to Massachusetts Resources.
Right. So
they're looking at geolocation, but it's not there.
That's the geolocation is, and I think Arlington, the region is coming up with some creative ideas, but the geolocation could slow down. There will still be a warm handoff, but yeah.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a really great thing for us to hear about in the fall, how that's going. Any other announcements, y'all? This is a really great long meeting. It's nice to see you. Okay, well, we will not see each other in August. We will see each other in September. We will do some chatting among P&D, but I don't see a reason why we need to meet a whole lot in person this year, although I would like to, because we get 3 meetings a year and we only have 3 meetings left. So, so that's something that we can talk about at a planning and development meeting, especially because we're in COVID times and DC is, a monkeypox hotspot, even though there aren't a ton of cases right now. So we'll be thinking about that. Please send me ideas offline or join us for the planning and development meeting in September. And it's great to see you. And the agenda had at the bottom some future meeting suggestions. So always love to hear more of those. So with that, have a wonderful summer.
Thank